Hello, everyone out there, and welcome back to my channel. Today, the title of my message is God Will Send Unusual Provision. And so, I want to start off by saying that when God says unusual, He means uncommon. He means it'll be different. He means it's not going to be ordinary. That means it's not coming the way that you are familiar with or how it's always been done. Because a lot of times when God has provided for us a certain way for a period of time, we think that's how He's always going to do it. But see, God might want to change the way He does things at any time. And so we cannot just put God in a box and think He's going to do things sometimes the same way all the time. And see, God has so many extraordinary and remarkable ways of providing for us that we don't know of. See, because a lot of times we as adults, we try to analyze everything. That means we want to know the information. We want to know everything ahead of time. And see, that is not the way it works. And God wants us to become His children. He wants us to be like little children, because when you tell a child something, they just believe what you said. He wants us to be open. He wants us to be open exactly like that, because in Matthew, the 18th chapter and the 3rd verse, it says, unless you be converted and become as little children, you can in no way enter into the kingdom of heaven. So, that means you have to humble yourself, basically. Because as grown-ups, we think we know everything and we want to be in control. And so you have to be open, because we try to put God in this box, in our little boxes, and God refuses to be in a box. And I just was thinking about examples, and I was thinking about, for some people, God might use certain people to help people to come up, to another level or to achieve wealth. But I see this a lot now, that sometimes God will bless people with businesses, different sort of business. And so a lot of times, people want to be wealthy. They want to have money, which is fine. But see, and so a lot of times they'll look at this person, because we have the internet. We have so much stuff on the internet now, and Facebook and YouTube, where people are showing their business, and so they begin to have seminars. So many people have seminars where they teach you basically the steps that they took to achieve their wealth. So sometimes you might think, because you take the steps that they told you to take, for you get all that information, and you begin to go through the steps to try to achieve wealth for yourself, and it don't work for you. And that's because what worked for them was for them. And God might have a whole different way of bringing wealth into your life. And so that's basically putting God in a box, because God deals with us. He deals with each and every one of us in a different way. And all His plans is not the same. What the plan that He has for your neighbor might not be the same plan that He has for yourself. So you cannot put God in a box. And so an example of somebody trying to put God in a box is Naaman. In the Old Testament, in the 2nd chapter of Kings, in the 5th chapter, it talks about how Naaman was a mighty man of valor. But Naaman was also a leper. And leprosy was a chronic disease that would cause lesions on the skin. Sometimes people's limbs would even fall off. And it also, I think it damaged your nerves as well. And so Naaman had a maid that worked for him that was of the children of Israel. And she basically gave him knowledge, because she had been kidnapped. She had been kidnapped because Naaman was in Syria. And they were the children of Israel's enemies. But they had been taken The maid had been taken, and she was working. She waited on Naaman's wife, and so she began to tell him how he could be healed. That there was a prophet, which was the prophet Elisha, and that he had the power of God that could heal him. And so Naaman, he had a preconceived idea on how he should be healed. He wanted to be in charge of his healing, but it was not to work out that way because God had a different plan. He wanted to have hands laid on him and all of this. But I want to read about Naaman in 2 Kings, the 5th chapter, the 9th through the 14th verse. And I read out of the King James Version for anyone that's following along, that want to follow along with me when I'm reading. And so it says, I'm going to start at the 9th verse. It says, so Naaman came with his horses. This was after he had got the information from the maid. So Naaman came with his horses and with his chariot and stood at the door of the house of Elisha. And Elisha sent a messenger unto him, saying, go and wash in Jordan 7 times, and thy flesh shall come again to thee, and thou shalt be clean. But Naaman was wroth. He was upset, and went away and said, behold, I thought he would surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God and strike his hand over the place and recover the leper. So he basically wanted to tell him how he wanted to tell God how he should heal him. That's how we are anyway. We want to tell God how he should provide. Because now his healing was going to be provided through God. And I want to read in that 12th verse. It says, oh, not Abana and Pharpar, rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? May I not wash in them and be clean? So he turned and went away in a rage. Because I guess the water where he was telling him to wash at in the Jordan was not as clean as the waters of these two places that he named. And so he was upset. And his servant came near and spake unto him and said, my father, if the prophet had bid thee to do some great thing, wouldest thou not have done it? How much rather then when he said to thee, wash and be clean? And then he went down and dipped himself 7 times in the Jordan, according to the saying of the man of God, and his flesh came again like unto the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. And so he had to humble himself and do what they asked him to do in order for him to get healed. And so God healed him in an unusual way. And see, God, he knows the way that he wants to take us, even though sometimes we don't appreciate his methods, because his methods might not be what you might think they should be. So we have to learn to be grateful. The thing is, we have to learn to be grateful for what God does, because God has done so much for us already, and we don't deserve it. We don't deserve what God does, but he loves us. He loves us. He's just a good God. And see, a lot of times we don't even say thank you for the little things that God do. And he deserves all the praise and all the glories. It talks about in Philippians 4:11 how in whatever state they're in, therewith to be content. We need to be content and be grateful for the little things that we have. Because a lot of times we just complaining because we have a little bit. But some people don't even have the little bit. It's always somebody else that's worse off than you. So we have to be thankful. Be thankful unto the Lord. In 1 Kings, the 17th chapter, it talks about the prophet Elijah, how he provided for Elijah in an unusual way, and it was during a famine. During the famine, God commanded him to go down to the brook Cherith and to remain there during the famine. And during the famine, he told him it was a brook there, so that means it was water there. And he used birds, ravens, to provide for him. They brought him flesh. In the morning, they brought him flesh and bread twice a day throughout the whole famine. And that was very unusual. And it's just so many different scriptures in the Bible where God did unusual things. I think about Moses. When the children of Israel, they began to complain about the manna that God was giving them. And so they was asking for meat. And so Moses went to God and asked God how was he going to be able to feed all of these people? And where was all this meat going to come from? And God told Moses, is my arm too short? He basically was telling Moses, anything too hard for me. And God sent so much meat that it took them about, it said it took, I know it took them about 2 or 3 days for them to collect this meat. It was so much, just an overflow of meat. So God can do anything that he wants to do when he wants to do it. And it also is a story talks about Jesus in the New Testament. It talks about how Jesus took 2 fish and 5 loaves, and he basically blessed it, and he multiplied and fed over 5,000 people. And he had some left over. So that was very unusual. So God, he has many ways of providing, many ways. And see, a lot of times, another thing is people have to stop being prideful. You know, because sometimes when you have always had provision, you always had a way to feed your family, sometimes people become prideful because they begin to think that it's because of what they done. You know, I work hard every day. I go to my job. I went to school and I got this degree. But everything that you do is only because of God. Because some people work hard as you and they still don't make it anywhere. So you have to give God the glory. And see, sometimes God humbles people by letting them suffer through different things, you know, and going without. And sometimes when people have to go without, they, you know, it's hard for them to let people help them. You know, sometimes they be in the need of help. And instead of, you know, I'm not saying they should beg for help, but instead of even receiving the help, sometimes they don't want people to make them look like they are less than. Because some people, they feel like they less than if they don't have the money that they should have, or the provisions that maybe they was used to relying on. And sometimes they pray to God and ask God for help. They ask God for help. And then when God sends the help, they miss it. Because they looking at who God is sending it through, or the way he might send it. So you have to learn to be sensitive to God. And it makes me think about, and I just want to say another thing, God can use anybody to help you. A stranger, your enemy, whoever, to help you. So you have to learn to not be prideful. And it makes me think about the story of the drowning man. I had to get the whole story. I wanted to read the whole story about the drowning man, because it's just a good example. And it says, a fellow was stuck on his rooftop in a flood, and he was praying to God for help. Soon a man in a rowboat came by, and the fellow shouted to the man on the roof, "Jump in, I can save you." The stranded fellow shouted back, "No, it's okay. I'm praying to God, and he's going to save me." So the rowboat went on. Then a motorboat came by. The fella in the motorboat shouted, "Jump in, I can save you." To this, the stranded man said, "No, thanks. I'm praying to God. He is going to save me. I have faith. So the motorboat went on. Then a helicopter came by. And the pilot shouted down, grab this rope and I will lift you to safety. To this, the stranded man again replied, no thanks. I'm praying to God and he's going to save me. I have faith. And so the helicopter reluctantly flew away. Soon the water rose above the rooftop and the man drowned and he went to heaven. And he finally got his chance to discuss this whole situation with God. At which point he exclaimed, I had faith in you, but you didn't save me. You let me drown. I don't understand why. To this, God replied, I sent you a rowboat, a motorboat, and a helicopter. What more did you expect? And so the moral of the story is be open. Be open to God. Because he missed it. Because it didn't come in the form that he was used to. And so you don't want to be like this drowning man. And so just expect God to show up. Just expect God to show up and be looking for the blessing. In Ephesians 3:20, it says, unto him that is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all you can think or ask, according to the power that worketh in you. So you be blessed and look out for the blessing. Amen. Bye bye for now. Have a blessed and prosperous day.